What do the founders of Calm, Planet Organic, Photobox, Moonpig, Shazam, Mumsnet, Last Minute, WeTransfer, Albright, and the School of Life all have in common? They all put their brain first and start their day with Heights. Heights is the smart supplement for brain health and cognitive performance using plant-based, natural ingredients designed to help you thrive. Listeners of this show can get 25% off their first month with the code LEADERSHEIGHTS at www.yourheights.com. Hello and good morning. I'm going to assume that you've started your day off with the Secret Lives of Leaders podcast, and an excellent choice by you, madam or sir. This week we have the very cool, very interesting, very witty and unbelievably successful Sarah Wood, who, apart from being a successful entrepreneur, is an absolutely fantastic speaker and lecturer at Cambridge University on a particularly unusual topic called LOLitics and memes. I think it's got a slightly longer title than that, but I won't ruin the interesting part in the interview where she talks about it. I'll leave that to you to find during the conversation. Now, Sarah is the co-founder of Unruly, and Unruly's mission is to get videos seen, shared, and loved across the open web for brands that want to move people, not just reach people. If you think that sounded a little bit cosmetic, it's because I read it straight off the internet, but I also have a photographic memory, which enabled me to remember the exact words Sarah said to me at the time, of course. Now, Sarah is famous for a lot of things, but mostly her personality and her attitude. She is famously energetic. Every single person that's ever come into contact with Sarah comments on exactly this. Now, the story of how Unruly got going is something truly inspiring. It, like anything, really came out of one of those late night idea sessions, and she's another person that works with her husband. So she has a crazy schedule, gets asked the same kind of questions over and over again, and obviously I tried to do my best to make the interview slightly different for her, so she wasn't too bored. So I hope that I managed to fulfill that promise. Rich, have you got any wise words for us before we launch into today's episodes?
No wise words, but I've just seen that we have had 200 downloads from Japan.
Fantastic. So, small in Japan.
We are, growing, but to all our Japanese fans, konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
And indeed. Enjoy the episode.
And Kira Nichiban to you too.
From Runway East Studios in London, welcome to the Secret Lives of Leaders.
Today we're joined by one of the best known and certainly most liked entrepreneurs in the UK, Sarah Wood from Unruly. The TLDR on Sarah is that she went to University of Cambridge, then became a lecturer at the University of Sussex, and then she co-founded Unruly, sold it for 114 million to Rupert Murdoch's News Corp a few years later, and now teaches a course back at Cambridge whilst maintaining a role as CEO of the company she helped build. Now that you have all the info you need on her, you are, of course, free to stop listening and carry on with your life. But then again, if you do that, you won't get to enjoy finding out what Unruly does, how Cambridge University responded to her suggested classroom title that she teaches, which is entitled Mashups, Memes and LOLitics, an online video culture and the screen media revolution. So we suggest you stick around. Sarah, thanks very much for coming in and welcome.
Thanks very much for having me, Daniel.
My pleasure. Did I get all of the intro right?
You got it all right.
Yeah? Okay, because usually what happens is we mention some of the key facts that make obviously entrepreneurs squirm, like numbers, and they're like, it was reported at that much, but never disclosed. But yeah, I found it in loads of sources, so I figured that was kind of like the number people were comfortable with. I've had to do some serious snooping for other people though. So, okay, we want to start off just by warming you up with a quick fire round, if you're okay with that. So we get some very quick soundbitey insight into Sarah. So, university lecturer or entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur.
Why?
Because at the moment I'm an entrepreneur who can also dabble at being a university lecturer.
Okay, so you get best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know that you obviously can't be an entrepreneur the other way around. Makes sense. Okay, mobile or desktop?
Mobile.
And is that for personal use or business?
Both.
Yeah, okay.
And in fact, this is one of the things that I think in the advertising industry we should see more of. I think there's still a little bit of a tendency in our industry to be creating on desktop
Yeah, there
people
is.
who are consuming on mobile.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of doing as much as I can, checking documents, checking papers right here on the phone.
Interesting. Yeah, I think not to dwell too much into this, but that comes down to a general mentality on how creative, or how it's almost like an easel, right? A screen is so much bigger on a desktop, and you feel a bit more creative going around that. But I do get where you're coming from. Okay, you can only have one of these for the rest of your life: movies or music. Which is it?
Movies, because they have soundtracks.
Oh, okay. I can see how this is going. You've always got a logical answer for beating the system.
Oh, sorry.
Literature or video? I feel like it's video because they'll always have literature.
Yeah, exactly. A video of somebody reading a book.
Yeah.
And there's layers of media within media.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cats or dogs?
Cats.
Good call. And just so everyone knows, Sarah's wearing an Unruly Nyan Cat t-shirt today, so looking very stylish. Facebook or YouTube?
YouTube.
Co-founder or do it alone?
Co-founder every time, as long as you've got the right people.
Fair enough. A film you love that you think all our listeners should watch?
I don't think there's any film that all your listeners should watch.
Sure. A film that you love?
I would say a film that I love. I love watching films with my kids. So that would be things like Bugsy Malone is a big favourite. Grown Ups is another big favourite.
Very funny.
It is very funny, isn't
yeah.
it? And serious message. Families can spend too much time on their tech, at their works, and then they need to come back and be together.
So do you spend most of your time when you watch films watching it with your kids, and therefore your mindset is all like, what is a film that an adult can tolerate that children will enjoy?
The first question I ask whenever I look at any film is, what is the rating? Is it a U? Because my youngest is still 7.
Right, okay.
And it's the hardest thing of all to find a family movie. We have family movie nights on Friday nights.
Yeah.
And I've got a 16-year-old, 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. And then 2 grown-ups. And believe me, it's challenging to find something that is suitable for everybody and enjoyed by all.
Well, all the Pixar films, but there's only so often that you can watch them.
That's right. And I'm a big fan of Star Wars, but strangely the kids aren't so keen. So
really?
there are a few films that you might think would work. But
you must wonder if they're really your children then. You must look at them and be like, oh, I don't remember having you actually now that we think about it. Okay, an entrepreneur that you admire?
So many. Martha Lane Fox. Not just because of the business that she built back in the 90s, but because of everything that she's done since then, and for her .Everyone project, which I think is one of the most important digital projects happening here in the UK today.
Do you think she's arguably the most inspirational female entrepreneur in the UK?
Most inspirational, most influential, and someone that I massively, massively admire.
No, that's awesome. Okay, any other city in the world or London to grow a company?
It's got to be London, every time.
I mean, I agree, but there's all the San Francisco and New York chat, so just curious.
I remember when we opened in San Francisco, and we have quite a few offices globally, and I've always got a real buzz from being in San Francisco, and enjoyed it. But there's something about London. Everything is so close together.
Yeah.
I think that's what I love about it, because I love walking.
Yeah.
I can walk from place to place. You can walk from banking centre in the city to Tech City just a few feet away, zip across to Houses of Parliament or 10 Downing Street. There's just everything that you could need within kind of 3 or 4 square miles. Which I love, but at the same time it doesn't feel claustrophobic because there's such a diversity of people and styles.
And it's the greenest city in the world.
Yes,
as a fact, which is my favourite fact about London, because you do only really notice it when you go to other cities, or like New York, and you're like, you guys have one park. Yeah. That's kind of nuts.
And it's really square.
Yeah, very square. Anyway, we're not here to slag off New York, obviously, but San Francisco would potentially be a second choice then.
Second choice could be San Francisco. I like Berlin as well.
Oh yeah, it's my fave.
Yeah, it's got a great vibe. When we opened Unruly in Germany, we opened in Berlin, and that was partly because we love the city.
Yeah.
Very not dissimilar to how Tech City was here 5-6 years ago.
No, I agree. Absolutely love it. Okay, thank you for playing. So we'll get on to the fun part. Can you tell us what Unruly is in your own words?
Unruly is a video ad technology platform. We work with over 90% of top 100 brands now, and we help them to get their videos watched, shared, loved online.
It's a massive stat, 90 out of the top 100, so 90% in other words, but that's crazy. So how did you build up that kind of traction with such premium brands?
So I think there are many ways in which Unruly stands out and is unique, but probably the one that has grown and become increasingly important over the last decade is the emotional intelligence that we bring to advertising. So we say we don't help brands reach people, we help brands move people. And the way that we do that is by bringing emotional intelligence to digital advertising at every point in the process. So we help brands understand which videos, which ads are moving consumers around the world right now and why, and which emotions are trending. Is it a big moment for nostalgia or humour? And how do Australians respond to?
So how do you do that? Do you track sentiment analysis on Twitter as your primary?
So we have panels and we test videos. So
I see. Okay.
we actually take specific videos, get intel on each of those videos. We have eye tracking, facial tracking. And then panel responses as well, so we can see which markets over-index or under-index for specific emotional responses and how ads perform.
So is it like a testing lab almost so it's like a really good process to work with Unruly before, for example, you'd ever launch a TV campaign. It's you work with Unruly to test all your market analysis, plus obviously get reach and distribution, but then you're kind of going to lean towards the right response on TV.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
People use us before they've even opened up the camera, before they've even thought about what they're going to do. They use us to think about what emotions are going to resonate with their audience, which social motivations will resonate with their audience, to have a better understanding of what moves their audience to act, to buy, to laugh, to cry, to share, depends on what the KPI is for that campaign. And then we get that video seen across our platform in polite ad formats. So we don't run forced pre-roll, we're outstream and skippable pre-roll and in-page, which means you won't be forced to watch an Unruly ad.
Because that would obviously trigger an annoying emotion already and would skew the data.
Absolutely. Because as soon as someone's forced to watch an ad, they're put off the brand, they feel pissed off. That's not the way that good advertising should work, and it's not the way that good advertising does work.
No, true. But then sorry to get stuck into this, but then presumably a lot of it comes down to sponsored content. Is that correct? As in like very native format content that sits within articles, or how does it work and I'm obviously thinking about it from a sense of knowing that News Corp bought you, and News Corp do a lot of pre-roll and a lot of that kind of advertising, or at least in my mind when I go on those sites, I feel like there's quite a lot of it. So then how do your ad formats work, in a specific sense? So as a consumer, how do I engage with it? Or is it more like on YouTube, a pre-roll?
So it may be within an article, it may be in streams, so as you're scrolling down an article, it comes up and starts playing on silent, and if you like it, you can
so contextual.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And it's a very global business, right? So how many employees do you have in how many countries? Or what countries?
So we have 300 employees across 20 different countries.
Wow. And there's a lot of countries.
And it's absolutely true. But it's important for us to be in the markets where our clients are. We are very much driven by the quality of our product and the quality of our service. So we have our 3 values that are super important to us. And
share them, of course, please.
Inspire change, share the love, deliver wow.
Nice.
And deliver wow is all about making sure that we do the very best that we can for our clients, for each other, exceed each other's expectations.
And for the audience.
And for the audience, helping create better ads. We really want to transform advertising for the better by helping brands create better ads and then distributing them in a polite, non-invasive way. But if we're going to do that and deliver wow for our clients, we do need people on the ground who can be there in time zone. So our dev team is based here in London, and this is our HQ.
Right.
And we have small operating teams in lots of other different countries. Sydney, Hamburg. Hamburg's a big office for us.
Any particular reason Hamburg's a big office when you started off in Berlin?
We started in Berlin, but then we acquired one of our competitors in Germany back in 2013, and they were based in Hamburg.
Right, okay.
And at that point we realised that all the customers, or many of the customers, were also based in Hamburg.
Sure.
So we moved operations to Hamburg.
Okay, that makes sense. And so when did the company start?
2006.
Okay, so 2006, and did you actually plan to exit? What was your original plan? So you sit there with your business plan, and lots of different people shape the story, like the original story, a very different way, which is, this is what we actually set out to do, this is what we didn't. What was that kind of starting moment for you? Like, how did that feel? And did you think, right, this is what we're going to build and why, and this is what makes it attractive?
So the three of us, myself, Scott and Matt, we were very committed to building a business that took advantage of the social web. And this was a really exciting moment to be an entrepreneur because culture was just being redefined and rewritten, because suddenly you weren't just turning to the internet to find out information. You could share content, upload content, comment on content. Reddit was just kicking off. There was Dig, there was Delicious, the whole kind of what was sometimes known as read write web, sometimes known as Web 2.0, sometimes known as social web. It was just getting started. It was a really exciting wave. We felt
I'm glad Web 2.0 never really caught on. That's the worst of all of them.
That's the worst of all of them. We felt it was. Well, I'm still looking for Web 3.0.
Yeah.
That's never going to be a thing. But we really didn't know what we wanted to do beyond that, other than that we wanted to do something, be part of this big cultural movement, and just see where it took us. At the same time, we were very ambitious and we wanted to do something big. And I think that's often the challenge when you're an entrepreneur, is managing the big ambition and what's the next small step that I need to take. So we wanted to build $1 billion business.
You did?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And we've got on record as saying that from very early days, we wanted to build $1 billion business.
And was it a surprise to you that News Corp came to you to purchase, that they were the interested party? Like, how did the whole relationship come about? Were there loads of other people that you were talking to? Were you like looking for it, or were you just sort of sitting back? And obviously when you're a big exciting company like yourself, people come to you, but can you give us some insight into what happened?
Well, I can say we were not sitting back. we were like running around, working our asses off, doing what we love to do, which is growing the company, opening
but
up
not
new
looking
offices.
for suitors necessarily.
No. I mean, we were really enjoying it, and we still are. We believe that we're having a positive impact on advertising. We believe that we have a positive impact on work culture, business culture. We have a fantastic team, very diverse team. It's a very empowering, creative environment. We love being part of that. So we weren't looking to change anything. And we had several people come talk to us, many companies that we admire, but it didn't feel like the right fit.
And were they agencies mostly? Yeah, I would have thought so.
What I can say is that we couldn't really see how it would be beneficial in the long term to the business and the culture to enter into those discussions. But then Rebecca, who's the CEO of News UK, came to visit our Future Video Lab one day, which in itself wasn't unusual because we work with most big publishers. They're our partners, so that in itself wasn't surprising.
So there was a pre-existing business relationship anyway, where they're a client.
So we were talking to them about running our placements, yes. And then the conversation just shifted because what we saw was they have fantastic global premium media titles, and especially focused in the US, the UK and Australia, which are three of our important markets. And we would have unique access to those titles where we'd work together more strategically. And then they could see that we had expertise in video, in advertising. We could bring the ad technology to help monetize their articles immediately on day one. So that was attractive, that we could help them to monetize their sites. But I think also they really liked the video expertise and the insight. And that is what made it an interesting conversation. They weren't just looking to buy a revenue stream. They weren't just looking to buy a tech company. They were looking to buy a company that had a really strong startup culture and that was creative as well as technical.
And unique ideas. And as I understand it, you've done a really good job of keeping some level of autonomy and independence from them, so you can carry on running your business the way you need to run it.
Yeah, well, this was always part of Rebecca's vision, which was when you have a startup or a scale up coming into the fold, the last thing you want to do is kill their spirit. And the last thing you want to do is turn them into the same thing as everybody else. That News bought us because we were different and because we had that startup vibe of innovative, creative, fearless, not afraid to make mistakes. We make many, but we don't really see them as mistakes. We just learn from them and try something else. So we've been really lucky to have that autonomy.
Yeah, and I guess if you're someone like News International, you get terrified of mistakes because they're all so completely public. So I can understand that it is probably really good for them anyway to separate out the culture and make sure that they're not intertwined in that way. I do think it's hard for any big corporation. I do too. It's just so public.
Because you are so public and with so much at stake. And when you're a listed company and you have investors to worry about and everybody's scrutinising every move.
And there's only a certain way you can talk as well.
That's very different from being that scale up, being that challenger brand that's hungry and that has less to lose. And on the contrary, has the most to gain by being unexpected, by being uncorporate, by breaking the rules.
Can I ask what the original vision was for Unruly and has that changed? So you talked about what Unruly does today. Does it do today what it did in day one? To a broader extent, obviously video and culture in general has moved on, but is it pretty much the same fundamentals or have you had to shift it during time?
So it's massively evolved over the time, over the last 10 years. It started off really as video analytics. If I was to say, what its heart was. So we started by tracking video shares across the social web, across the blogosphere, which is where all the sharing was going on back then, and ranking the most shared videos. So we could see which videos were popular. Then over the years that's evolved. We realised that what brands wanted to do was to be able to spread their own videos online. So I guess 2007, 2008, 2009, there was a big focus on going viral. And how brands could kickstart global conversations with a video. So we were at the forefront of that. What we managed to do then was disentangle all the different variables. We had so much data on the videos that were being widely shared and those that weren't. We could start looking at what it was that made videos go viral, what makes a video shareable. So we launched our predictor, Unruly EQ.
That's cool.
Which predicts shareability, predicts emotional engagement with ads.
So do you work with creative agencies at this stage? Yeah, you must do, right?
Yes, creative agencies, media agencies, brands
so
directly. And then the other thing that's changed over time is more of a focus on emotional intelligence more broadly. So what we realised was that sharing was just a proxy. And we could see that videos that got shared widely were also successful in other ways, but the secret sauce there is emotional connection. And the videos that have the strongest emotional connection with the viewers are the ones that are watched for longer, the ones that people go on and share, the ones that people then remember the brand. They're also the ones that drive purchase intent and ultimately sales uplift. So I would say that's how the idea has developed over the last decade as we've gathered more data and got more sophisticated.
And then there's the outliers of emotional outrage with things like Harambe, which just then become their own entire media landscape in its own right.
Absolutely. And anger is so positive emotions are more likely to be shared than negative ones, and with the exception of anger.
With the exception of like those unique circumstances that go crazy. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, and the other thing, just thinking about, because that's a 10-year period, it's really interesting to see how things have evolved. So our distribution stack, which is the core of our business, is distributing those ads. So the type of publishers that we've worked with has really evolved. So in the early days, it was lots of niche blogs and small passion blogs. We still do work with those titles, but we also work with much larger publishers now. As we've seen the online media ecosystem evolve, mature, we're now, so 84% of our views now are delivered on Comscore 250 sites. And largely we've needed to make that shift to be able to scale the business and deliver the volume of views and the reach and engagement that brands are looking for.
So in a way, I would say that surprises me, because I would have just expected it to be the other way, where technically speaking, if you look at an evolution of the media landscape, it's eyeballs distributed across, unique interest titles. So you see across the whole board, you see so many more bloggers, micro bloggers, and these influencer agencies that come up and sweep up all the traffic of them and distribute it accordingly, because people like to find their unique person that speaks to them a bit more than the very national tone of the bigger papers or bigger websites. So obviously the facts are just saying that actually surprised me quite a lot, because I would have just expected as more millions of micro bloggers, so to speak.
So we work with thousands of micro bloggers. But if you've got brands that are looking for massive scale, there's always a trade-off between specificity and scale. And the brands that we work with often are global brands. They're wanting to run mass campaigns.
Yeah, it does make sense.
So when you talk about the...
And also you've got a job to do at scale, so it's quite hard to do too many negotiations on, even with networks.
Well, the platform that we have is self-serve, so publishers can come in and pick up themselves. So we've been able to scale with small publishers. But the funny thing is, I'm a huge fan of niche blogs, passion blogs. I think that's where you really get a lot of engagement, and that's why we still work with so many of them. But for a lot of the media agencies and the brands, they like the security of a brand name they know.
Yeah, does make sense.
So for me...
Or no one, I can't remember the famous quote now, maybe you can help me, but it's like no one ever got fired for something like placing a TV ad on ITV prime time, right? As in, like, it can't go wrong, and if it did go wrong, you can't really be blamed.
Yes. People often like to take the safe route, but I think you need both, because with some of those big titles, you do get the scale and the brand name, if that's important. But then with those smaller niche titles, that's where you really get the engagement, the deeper engagement.
So I was going to ask you a question around being a first-time entrepreneur and the whole stigma around, the fact that they're often not successful and it does take 2 or 3 goes. But then, of course, I discovered Eat My Hamster. So tell me about Eat My Hamster.
So,
what is that?
First off, I'm not aware of the stigma. I guess there's always a stigma if you look hard enough. So I think entrepreneurs can come from anywhere, can do anything. And I would always say to anybody, don't pay too much attention to what people tell you is the norm.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's more, to be fair, I think it's more based on statistics on success rates, simply because if it is your second or third go, you know how not to fuck up a funding round, and you know how not to give someone too much equity when all they did was nothing. It's very simple mistakes you do often make first time round.
You learn and you practice. Like anything, you get better the more practice you have. That said, there is something about coming in and being and not knowing what to do that I think is quite powerful and takes you. It just gives you all kinds of opportunities that you might not have been open to. Just like,
working with graduates, it's like amazing because they're just willing to learn and they soak everything up with a sponge. And actually, you work with people who've been trained in the same role for 20 years. Getting them to break out of how they think about things is impossible. And in a moving media landscape, especially, that I can imagine is really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we digress. Eat My Hamster.
You're absolutely right to mention Eat My Hamster. Oh, this was so much fun.
Good.
So when we started Unruly, we didn't know, as I was saying earlier, we didn't know what we wanted to do. There was no grand vision. I love these myths around entrepreneurship that you have a eureka moment or a burning desire to do something specific or a killer idea. I think is another phrase that gets used. We didn't have any of those things.
You just wanted to be an entrepreneur.
We had 3 people who wanted to be building something and be part of the social web.
Yep.
So what we did, we didn't really mind. We just knew we needed to do something. So we thought, well, what do we enjoy doing? Well, we enjoy watching funny videos.
I thought you were going to say we enjoy eating hamsters. I was like,
Eating hamsters less so. No, one of my favourite childhood pets was Hannah the hamster.
Okay.
Who I did not eat, and she was absolutely adorable.
But where is she now?
Where is she now? She died a sorry death.
Being eaten.
I'm not going to go into that, and it wasn't, and there was no culpability.
All I'm saying is she doesn't exist anymore, and there's no proof about what did or didn't happen to her, and then Eat My Hamster appeared, so it's not looking good for you.
Well, it wasn't called Ate My Hamster, was it?
Oh yeah, true.
It was a comedy, a kind of an aggregated content comedy site. So kind of like Dig for comedy.
Okay.
Where people could submit their funny jokes, pictures, videos. And we spent the first 3 months building this out. It was a great platform. It looked beautiful. And the people that came to visit, we put some AdWords out. We advertised on Fark and a few other places, eBabs World. And people who came really loved the site, but it didn't get great traction. And we didn't have time to wait 6, 9, 12, 18 months.
Had you had any funding at that point, or is it just you guys took messing around?
We were bootstrapped, so we really needed to find a business model quite quickly. So we did kill the hamster at that point and decided that it wasn't going to be a viable business model. But what we'd seen was, and this is where it's brilliant, you make these mistakes, so for many people that would be a mistake. Absolutely, we could see that video, of all the different content types, video was the content type that had most engagement by miles.
Yeah.
People were uploading the videos, they were sharing them, they were talking about them, they were getting more likes, and on every front, video was the media type that was getting the most attention. So from there, we could also see that it was really hard to find content because we were scouring the web looking for jokes, looking for videos. And we thought, well, hang on a minute, why don't we just build a crawler, and then we can see very quickly which videos are the most popular, what's hot now, crawl the social web, rank those links, and that's when we built viralvideochart.com.
That does make sense. And just before going into my next question. I guess just thinking about the general VC landscape and general funding landscape, there does seem to be, again, it's not quite stigma, it's more like comments in the ecosystem about ad tech. So ad tech is, at the moment, the general consensus is it's done in terms of being a high growth investment opportunity. There's people like yourselves, there's people like Criteo, there's a ton of ad technology companies that have been extremely successful and made a lot of people a lot of money, including all the investors. But it feels like at the moment, people are a bit put off and a bit scared about where the growth of that industry goes because of things out of their control, like ad blockalypse and all that kind of stuff. Do you see those threats as threats for Unruly? And do you see those threats in the landscape, full stop, as, in a way, an opportunity? Because it's much harder for new entrants if the general consensus for funding is that's not a hot area we're interested in at the moment.
So we've been, as I mentioned, we've been advocating for better ads, better user experiences for the last 10 years.
Yeah. So no one's better to push that vision.
It was a really interesting moment when finally the rest of the industry started talking about it. What surprised us was that they were shocked. The shock that people would be installing these ad blockers. Of course they're installing ad blockers. You're piping shitty ads at them, following them around the internet, following them around just enough to be creepy, not enough to be actually useful, showing them content that is irrelevant and poor quality and brings no value to their lives. So for us it was a real opportunity to talk to more brands, and brands that previously hadn't thought that our mission mattered, who hadn't thought that the quality of advertising mattered, suddenly were coming to us, wanted to come to our lab. The Future Video Lab is all about how to future-proof your advertising strategy, and it's about having ads with purpose, basically having a company with purpose, because once you know what your company purpose is and your higher purpose and mission is, then you can start talking with an authentic voice, and then you can feed that through into your marketing.
Plus companies with purpose at the heart of their mission are more profitable.
Absolutely.
As a fact. And there's a really interesting report done by Warren Buffett on exactly this.
Yes. Yeah.
And no one ever discounts anything that man says. So
I think it's 400% more profitable if you've got purpose at the heart of your business. There's other studies, another one that have us put out around meaningful brands. If your brand is seen to be meaningful, then you get 54% increase in share of wallet. So there are lots of stats around that tell you it makes good business sense to have a purposeful business. And for us, this was a great opportunity to be able to say to brands, have a purposeful business, have a purposeful marketing campaign, come and work with us, and we can make sure that you're creating and distributing ads that are going to engage, not alienate your audiences. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. So whilst running Unruly, you also teach a course at Cambridge, because I guess running a global empire is a bit boring, so you probably have to teach a course at Cambridge to keep yourself entertained as well. So it sounds exactly like the kind of thing I don't expect to see at Cambridge, yet exactly the kind of thing that I think universities should focus more on. So I think actually massive kudos to Cambridge for picking a course like that, because my experience of university, for anyone that ever asked me, is I went to Nottingham, which is a red brick university, and it doesn't teach anything interesting. And actually Nottingham Trent down the road, which is a far less respected university, teaches far more meaningful courses that are going to get people jobs. So I massively respect and appreciate any university that's coming up with coming a bit more forward-looking and modern with their approach to what actually matters. Now, obviously, your particular core subject is still niche, but how many jobs want to hire people that have taken like that kind of course? I mean, it must be inundated with candidates.
It's a really fun course to teach. I remember when I went to them and said, what do you think? I did a one-off seminar with Professor David Trotter, who was at UCL when I was doing my PhD. So we knew each other from UCL, a very respected academic and someone who I liked a lot. And he'd asked me to come in and do a one-off seminar. And I did that on YouTube. That was back in 2008. Really enjoyed it and thought to myself, at the time we were getting busier, we were starting to recruit people, we were looking around thinking, where do we find people who are really strong in video culture and very smart and open to learning and passionate about video? And I looked looked across at Cambridge University and thought, well, there's a bunch of really smart people. If we had people coming out of Cambridge who understood and were passionate about video culture, they'd be perfect for our business. And then
That's amazing. So you literally created the market of graduates that you need to hire.
Yes.
That's genius.
And we have the most talented, highly qualified AdOps team in
Yeah, I
the
can
UK
imagine.
as a result of it.
I can imagine.
It's been phenomenal, and at the same time, it gives me personally and selfishly a few weeks each year. It's just I only teach for the one term, and it gives me a few weeks each year to reflect on what the latest trends are, what's happened since this time last year, what are the trends that are impacting video this year that brands will want to know about next year.
And how long does it take to actually prepare material for the course then? So you say it's a term, but that's a term of teaching. So how long do you have to take to prepare everything? Because everything moves so fast in a year in online media.
It does. So the way the course is structured is the structure is loose enough to be able to not need too much updating each year. So tomorrow's seminar is on Time Lords and time lapses, and it looks at ideas of time within video and what that means. The different spatial time. You've got the if you think about the time in the comments that go back all the way back down 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. So this kind of asymmetry of commenting. You've got the time bar along the bottom. You've got time lapse. You've got slow mo. You've got hyperlapse. There's all these different video techniques that mess with time. So that's broad. And then each week we have a playlist. So whichever theme we're doing, each student brings a video to talk about that's relevant now. So the videos that we talk about this year will be very different to the ones we talked about last year.
I can imagine everyone at Cambridge is really envious of the people that take this course.
It's one of those courses that people say, no, you have to be kidding me.
It must be really difficult though to be like so proud to go to Cambridge and then have to explain to your parents what you're actually doing at Cambridge, because I just don't reckon they'd be on board.
LOLitics.
Yeah, exactly.
People's parents looking suspicious.
100% those parents go around and say, my kid's studying politics. There's literally no chance that they actually are honest about what their kids are doing.
Yeah, I mean, the really interesting thing about the course, and as you say, huge kudos to Cambridge for including it and going with it. It's a very interesting course. It sits within the MML faculty, the Medieval and Modern Languages faculty. So it's being taught alongside some of the oldest languages, and then here you have this very kind of new media. It's taught as part of the Screen Cultures MPhil though. So it sits alongside TV and film, and in that sense.
Do you study film at all as part of that?
My students do. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm too busy sitting at home watching Grown Ups for the test.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, someone passionate about building technology and just generally the future, I would suppose. Your business has always been predicated on the idea of you having a grasp on the future. Yeah. How do you think VR is going to impact the business and society in general in the near future?
So I'm really excited by VR. It's got a long way yet until it scales. But certainly when we're talking to brands, it's an area that they are spending a lot of time exploring. In terms of branded content, it's the best opportunity the brands have got for immersive experiences and that quality of attention that they crave. VR is potentially a much more effective way and less intrusive way, if people are choosing to put on their headsets, of reaching people and getting that quality of attention. No need to shout at people, just create an experience that's awesome and makes them want to be part of it. More broadly, I think I agree that it's an empathy machine. And anything that helps to create empathy can be very powerful. I see it being used by charities.
Just as you were talking, I kind of got a vision of how Disney essentially created immersive experiences for its brand with theme parks. And actually the opportunity with VR is for technologists to work with brands to create immersive experiences in the same kind of realm, but in a virtual realm, obviously, which is a lot cheaper. But as long as it delights and excites, then there's a really big opportunity to engage.
There was I was out in the US at a big alcohol brand, their HQ, and they were showing a VR experience. They were letting people experience a VR experience of drink driving, and it was terrifying. Being a passenger in a car with someone who'd had a drink, and then you are in the car crash, and the chair judders. And my heart was racing, and I can really see it. You can see the power, the visceral power of being in one of those experiences can be used to excite or delight or fright.
Yes.
There are many different ways that VR can be used by brands to convey a message.
That is cool. What about augmented reality?
So this clearly has more scale and it ought to be huge, but I don't see brands quite as excited about AR as they are about VR.
Isn't your job not to really worry about what ultimately brands think? Isn't your job more to work out what consumers want and how consumers react, and then come up with your own formula for how to make that interesting with brands before brands all fuck it up? So by that I mean brands had already been doing video and advertising and everything else, and Unruly comes along and go, actually what you're not paying attention to is the medium being online video now rather than just TV where your video used to sit. This is how to do it well because we're spending time with consumers understanding what works, what doesn't. Same opportunity with AR, where it's like there is no opportunity for brands to understand how to adapt their media for that experience. But as shown with Pokemon Go, fad or not, there's an appetite. Yeah. So isn't it therefore Unruly's opportunity and area of interest to work out that and bring it to brands rather than work out the brand appetite? Does that make sense? Or am I barking up the wrong tree?
It's both.
Okay.
It's really easy for an entrepreneur to tell brands what to do.
Yeah.
Not always the way to scale a business.
Sure.
What you find is there are every industry. Well, I don't know that every industry is the same, but certainly in advertising, there'll be some people that are really receptive to that message, but they may not be the people that are investing. They may not be the people that hold the marketing budgets. It might be the innovation budget, much smaller than the marketing budget. Yeah. So I think it can be, you can certainly, and one of the things that brands do come to us for is precisely this, what's next. But we would never presume to tell brands that we have all the answers.
Sure.
And we would also want to be listening to them as well. I think the listening part of being an entrepreneur is something that's really overlooked.
Yep.
It's not about telling your customers what they need to know. It's about listening to what they'd like to learn and where they're thinking they're going to go next and helping them on that journey.
Yeah.
And the name Unruly very much comes out of this. When we were thinking about what to call the company, we thought, well, what is it? What is the landscape like? How do you define this media landscape? It's unruly. It's messy. And we recognise that messiness, and we're here to help them.
Often named as the Wild West.
Yeah.
No rules, no regulations. Okay, so you're originally from Newcastle, but then you moved down to Brighton before studying at Cambridge. So any unique insights or thoughts about where you're from and your personal circumstances and moving around like region to region? Has any of that had a particular impact on you? Have you ever thought about that actively, or is it just whatever, that's where I come from?
Do you know, the first time that I thought about that was over the summer when I did an interview with Radio Newcastle.
Who reminded you of your roots?
And I was thinking,
well, they're probably looking, they've got Alan Shearer, Cheryl, and now you, so they're going to claim what they can have.
I think there are a couple of qualities that Geordies have, and one is friendliness. Very friendly, very open, and then the other is grit and tenacity. We're used to the cold weather, we're used to the wind, we're used to things being a little bit difficult, and we don't let that stop us. And I would say that I've carried that with me. And both my parents are Northerners. My mum's a Scouse and my dad's from Manchester, and they quite strong work ethic.
Yeah,
they
hard
work
graft
hard.
vibes.
Exactly, yeah. And that work ethic, not being afraid to work hard, expecting things to be difficult, but then knowing that you struggle through that and you get through that and you come out at the end of it stronger, I think is very much part of who I am.
Okay, so that was obviously more of an interesting question for you. So how is the most boring question you're likely to be asked, which is, what's it like running a business with your husband?
Well, what's it like going to work with your best friend every day?
That's what I do.
I love it.
I do that.
There you go. What's it like going to work with your best friend every day?
I haven't married him yet, but great fun. Yeah, really good fun.
That's just a certificate. That's a piece of paper. That doesn't make any difference to the relationship.
But we don't have a best friend certificate, so where can I get one of those?
What I think is whoever you set up in business with, you need to trust and you need to have a good relationship with, because you're going to be relying on each other so much. And there are three co-founders. There's myself, there's Scott, and there's Matt as well. And the three of us work really well together. We're very complementary. We have different skills and we respect each other. Okay. And that's, I think, is the most important thing.
So,
one of the good things actually about it being Scott and Scott being my husband, I would say, it's been, because of that, it's been much easier to bring the kids along on the journey.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's actually been huge.
Part of the culture, I can imagine,
Yes,
like very
yeah.
central to the culture.
So having the kids in the office is fantastic.
Yeah.
When we moved into our new office last week, it was actually my youngest Sunday who did the welcome video.
Yeah.
And she'd spent the evening before on the climbing wall and in the park and showing off the special desks, and that was it's lovely for her to be involved.
Nice. So I guess the other boring question would be about being a female entrepreneur. So slightly different framing for this one. I know you got 48% of your, is it 48% of your staff that are female?
Yeah.
And how many of them?
46% of our people managers.
Okay, so
44% of our board.
Okay, so that's obviously great statistics. Do you feel like that's something that should be discussed and pushed forward and encouraged, or are you of the opinion that no, why are we making a big deal out of it? They're just the best people for the job and their gender's irrelevant. What kind of side do you sit on for the argument?
They are the best people for the job,
Yeah.
and they're absolutely awesome. At the same time, though, I do believe that diverse businesses perform better. They get better results, better business results, and they're more pleasant places to work because you have a mix of opinions, a mix of experiences, and that's just more enriching. That diversity is culturally enriching, I believe. So I don't. It's not something that I think about actively. But I do see that there is an imbalance. I do see we need more female role models.
Do you see yourself as a flag bearer for it, or do you just hate that?
I don't really think about it. If I see myself as anything, it's a cautionary tale.
Okay, fair, right. So, and modest, let's just say, but no one ever called themselves modest, so I'll just do it for you. So you're famously energetic and you're wearing the Converse trainers that you're obviously most famous for. Have you ever been approached by them as brand ambassador?
No, I haven't.
That's not really fair, is it?
Damn it.
Because everyone always comments on the Converse trainers. So,
They do, that's true.
It's
But I was wondering, because they're because I call them Converse All Star, but I can see they're kind of gradually rebranding to Chuck Taylors. They call them Chuck Taylors in the US, and I wonder if this branding is coming to the UK.
Interesting.
They probably shudder every time they hear me talking about Converse because it's like old branding or something. I don't know.
They've got the budget to just pay you to say what they want you to say about them, and until they do that, you can say whatever you like.
I can say what I want.
So you're always running between meetings, you're very energetic, but are you worried about things like burnout at all? Has that ever been on the cards for you? Has it ever been close? This is obviously a very common thing that you do hear from entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I don't know, I wonder, maybe I've been burnt out since the age of 7 when I started overcommitting and doing everything that I possibly could and just getting involved wherever I could. I don't worry about that, no.
It doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would affect you, but then has it like ever even entered your mind? And the reason I ask is like because one of the people that I'm interviewing in a couple of weeks is someone who's gone through it completely and set up his business based on that, called Sanctus, and he had complete burnout, depression, etc. And it catches, and he was like us, super upbeat, energetic, happy, and just happened out of nowhere. And it's just that story really fascinates me in a kind of, you don't know what you don't know, and how do you even prepare for something that you can't see on the horizon?
Absolutely. I think that's really interesting. And my outlook is very positive, and that's just the way that I operate.
Yeah.
And if I spend too much time thinking about what could go wrong, well, depression, illness, the kids, the business, there's always so much that could go wrong.
So just prepare for the best.
So I hope, I tend to hope for the best and prepare for the best, actually. And generally things work out well.
And take awkward and difficult situations and turn them into something amazing. So that's a nice segue into the actual story of how you started with going into entrepreneurship, is it not? So after the 7/7 bombings, I read you were particularly caught out in the whole emotion of the experience and decided that you wanted to make more of your life. Yeah. Is that generally the right?
Yeah, that is. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I was running late from school. I dropped off the kids at school and was with a couple of other mums, and we were racing down to the station. We were all of us late, going, I can't believe it. One was late for one meeting. I was late to get to the library. I was off to King's Cross, which is where I was.
Russell Square, yeah.
And we arrived at the tube station, went down the stairs, and everyone was being evacuated, and there was pandemonium, and it wasn't the station where everything was happening, but clearly the whole tube network was in
right
pandemonium.
Next to it, yeah.
So we came back upstairs, and then the helicopters were all around, and I just remember then when I went home, I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to clearly I'm not going to the British Library today. It's not going to be a great day for that. I'm going to go home and see what's going on. And as watching everything unfold and seeing what happened, it's just one of those moments where you realise, so I was really lucky today, and I'm really glad that I was late for school today and that I wasn't at the wrong station at the wrong time. But 55 people didn't make it home today, and being really mindful of that narrow escape. And I think when you do have those moments, those near-miss moments, it does make you reevaluate what your purpose is and what you're doing here. And I just thought to myself, if this was my last day, is this what I'd want to be doing? And I realised, actually, no. I want to be closer to my kids. And at the time I was lecturing in Sussex and commuting from Hackney all the way down to Sussex, which is a long commute. Yeah. And I used to break my heart every week when I would drop Ezra at nursery on my way to catch the train. I'd drop him on a Tuesday morning, wouldn't see him until Thursday night. And I could physically barely manage that. And then at the same time, being an academic, I enjoyed it. My teaching is a bit of a vocation for me, and research is my passion. I'm so curious. Yeah. But I could see that moving up the academic ladder just meant more admin and maybe a slightly bigger office with more filing cabinets in it. And I just didn't feel that exciting.
No, fair. And you know what's amazing is that out of that moment of terror, fear, and perspective, you know, a few years later, 300 people who rely on their families, living, salaries, etc., thanks to your decision to do something meaningful. So that's quite an amazing fact. To think about, you've actually created 300 jobs from that moment and turned it into something amazing.
Yeah. And I love the way you didn't just say 300 jobs, you said 300 families.
Yeah, it is.
Because I think that's really key. Yeah. And whenever we think about people, they're not employees.
It's livelihood, of course.
They're people, and there are families that come with that people, and it's just, I think it's so important. One of our big things that Unruly is remembering that we're not workers. We're fathers, we're mothers, we're daughters, we're sisters, we're brothers, we're best friends. And one of the big things when we've built Unruly is creating a company and a culture where you can be yourself, and you can be the same self you are at home as you are at work. Bring your boyfriend and your boyfriend's parents, or your cousin's parents, or your second cousin's aunts to come in and visit and sit and have coffee.
Now it sounds like you've got an Amish workforce. Now it's starting to sound a little bit different.
Do you know what? It's amazing when people bring in family or friends or friends of family to come and have a look around the office and just to come in and have a cup of coffee. That's always one of my favourite moments.
They all got giant beards, eating straw and dungarees.
Generally not.
No, okay. That was my take on the second cousins, but maybe that was just cousins marrying cousins. I don't know how I quite got into that visual.
I don't know how you went there.
No, I don't know. Just it happened. Anyway, so moving on. How would you describe yourself in a sentence or two? Horrible question, right? On purpose. It's quite as you've been the whole time. It's horrible.
How would I describe myself? Muddling along and 5 minutes late. That's probably how I describe myself.
Interesting. Yeah, fair enough. So,
as most of us do.
Sure, I'll make this a bit easier for you. We asked one of your colleagues, DW, which is, of course, a pseudonym which is now wasted because you know exactly who DW is. But anyway, and we asked him what he thought of you, and he basically said, I would describe Sarah as inspirational, driven, full of energy, charismatic, full of energy again, restless, and funny. Did I mention energetic and full of energy? I think he obviously thinks you might drink a lot of coffee. And as proof, Sarah did walk into this interview with a coffee, and I'd preempted and bought her a coffee, and she's been having both during the entire time. So yeah, she obviously likes coffee.
So actually, maybe we can just distill it all down to one word, which is caffeinated.
Yeah, caffeinated. Yeah, exactly. And when asked if how you've been throughout the whole journey, he said that you've been the same as you've always been. Very passionate about Unruly and the people who work here. Very driven to succeed. Nothing has changed about that, and it will always be the case. I don't think I've ever seen her just relax and call it a day. She always wants to move on to the next task, the next objective, the next event. It's like she always wants to squeeze in as much of her day as possible. I think that sounds fair.
That does sound fair.
Yeah, sound like someone you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so just coming on to the end, do you think you have a healthy work-life balance? I get the feeling you don't really think there is a difference, but what would you say to the question?
Yeah. I love what I do, so it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
And
it's just your life.
This is my life, and it's important to me that the kids can come too, and that the kids have a great time. And I think more about work-life integration rather than work-life balance. I think it's important to be able to work and to be at home with your family and not to feel torn between the two.
Yeah.
And for me, being an entrepreneur enabled me to do that because it gave me control
Yeah.
and autonomy. And sure, you can say
and control
it's
to create your own culture where other people
Yes,
can fit into
yes,
that lifestyle choice as well.
And that's been one of the huge advantages of having my own business, is being able to build a culture. It's such a privilege to build that culture where everybody feels they can come in, be themselves, and not need to worry about how the rest of their life fits into their work life.
That's nice.
Something that DW doesn't know, of course, is that I sleep a lot. And I sleep like a baby.
Oh, really?
And I think that for people who say, where does your energy come from?
Balance.
It
and
comes
rest.
from 9 hours sleep a night.
Yeah.
And there probably aren't that many people that get 8 or 9 hours
No,
sleep
that's a
a
lot.
night.
That is a lot.
But I love sleeping.
Yeah, it's
you know,
amazing.
when you've worked really hard all day and you feel that you've achieved a lot and you get the kids off to bed, and there's nothing better than just lying down on a soft mattress and a soft pillow and curling up and going out like a light.
All the way until your alarm pisses you off in the morning. Okay, so the last section is on lessons, failures, and really ideally stopping other people making them. So what major mistakes have you made that you hope others avoid?
The mistakes that I've made have been the most important and helpful parts of the whole journey, is one thing I would say.
Yeah.
So Eat My Hamster we talked about, you could say that was a mistake, that did not work out, but we learned so much. Even Viral Video Chart didn't work out, wasn't a business model.
Yeah.
Really interesting site, collected lots of great data, but wasn't a viable business model in its own right, but taught us so much and we learned from that.
Okay.
So learning from the mistakes is key. One tip I would say...
So a mistake would be never to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Whoa!
Too meta.
Too better for me this time of the day. One thing I do think is hiring and not taking references is always a mistake.
Oh, interesting.
And sometimes in the in the exciting full flush of getting someone across the line that you want to come work for you, you forget to do the basics, to go back and talk to their bosses and find out what they were like. And if maybe their bosses don't talk to you, you think, oh, well, maybe they're too busy. I would say to any entrepreneur, when you're hiring people, hire carefully, choose carefully, do take the time to take the references, because you'll live to regret it if you don't.
And you'll be the next person maybe delivering the bad reference. Yeah, that's very good advice, and alarm bells going off in my head right now about the times I haven't done that, so very good point. Have you got any funny or maybe non-funny stories of a huge mistake that you've actually made in your journey that you felt like, it was the end of the world at the time, but actually, obviously, looking back, whatever, you can laugh about it and move on. It's not such a big deal. Have there ever been any of those things?
Many. I'm always ending up in embarrassing situations and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. One of the early mistakes that I remember making that did at the time feel like the end of the world was when we were just setting out and we had maybe a couple of hundred publishers, and I was responsible for paying the publishers, and I was putting the PayPal pay run through, and I'd made some mistake with it, and then I got totally freaked out, and I emailed all the publishers to say, sorry, no, there's been a mistake, totally my bad. I'll get it sorted,
Yeah.
but rather than BCCing them, I CCC'd them. So then suddenly I had everybody on a CC pinging me back going, well, cheers for that. Now you've shared my details with everybody. And that was, I guess, that was 10 years ago now. And it was just the first time that I'd been responsible for making payments.
It's funny though, because it still sits with you. You still remember it, and it was 10 years ago.
It was a very early moment, and it was my first big stomach churning moment. When I'd done a stupid thing and then compounded it by doing another stupid thing. But then I guess what I realised quite early on was if you worry too much about those moments, then you don't keep moving forward fast enough.
Sure. So what mistakes do you see people making that annoy you? Or that you want to call out, or you want to help kind of mould them and stop them from doing that?
The most common, I don't know if it's a mistake, but the most common trait I see in a lot of entrepreneurs in the early days is they're very precious about their idea.
Spot on. Yeah. You can't tell anyone about it.
Exactly. It's stealth. It's very secret, and someone is definitely going to steal it if they tell anybody. And I think ideas are overrated.
In the execution.
It is in the execution. It's 99% execution, perspiration, and only 1% in the genius of the idea.
The thing I say to people when they're and I had this 2 weeks ago, someone wouldn't tell me their idea, they wanted help, and I was just like, it's quite frustrating. I won't get annoyed with you because I do understand that happens a lot. But do you know how hard it is to run any business, even if it's a coffee shop? Like, if you're not 100% behind the idea and willing to give it everything, it's not going to succeed. So no one wants to rip it off, because it's not that exciting to rip off someone else's idea and then give 110% to it. Like, that's actually quite an unlikely scenario. Yeah. So if it's all in the execution and it's your idea, you're going to be able to do it better than them anyway. And
it's quite liberating when you recognise that, because then you stop worrying and being so anxious about what you can't say.
Yeah.
You realise that you can tell people your idea. And even if they try and rip it off, as you say, it's probably not going to be that great, because it's in the execution and you're in control of that.
Well, the one really key thing about sharing your idea with other people is it opens doors. Yes. So if you don't tell someone what your idea is, how can they I know John who'd be amazing for you to talk to. He's done something just like this, and you close off all the serendipity of your own idea and your own opportunity. I massively agree with you. Right, I once read that you hate the question, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? So you're obviously going to hate this question.
You've already met on me again.
You're going to hate this question. But what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
That advice is overrated.
Very good. Right, moving on. I didn't think I was going to get a serious one out of you anyway. But what advice would you give to people starting up in today's climate? So thinking about where entrepreneurship is today, and it's obviously in an amazing prominent position, really. It's something that has crept up. When you started, it certainly wasn't the thing. Fast forward 10 years, 2016, 2017, amazing time to be an entrepreneur in terms of support and visibility. Yes. So what would your advice be? And
infrastructure as well. There's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. You can get started so quickly, building a site, amplifying on social,
servers on the cloud, everything.
It's just so straightforward. What that means is there's more emphasis than ever before on creating a brand and building a brand, because that's how you will differentiate. So I would say increasingly it's harder to differentiate by technology alone, and it's more important than ever before as people are building businesses to build the brand and build the brand loyalty.
Yeah, the tone.
And that's what will help to differentiate you. My overall advice would be just do it and learn by doing. The other thing I see in entrepreneurs who are just starting out is there's a lot of anxiety about doing anything. Is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do now? Should I be doing it here? Should I be doing it with these people? Should I be doing it on this server? Just do something. Do something, and then you can start learning. And the more you do, the more you'll learn. You'll learn what those mistakes are. So that would be my big advice.
Okay, I like it. Final question. So who inspires you? Who do you look up to? So you've mentioned Martha Lane Fox. Anyone else on like a grander scale? It
tends to be the people around me that inspire me. And I think this has always been the case in my life. It's been teachers, parents, friends. The Unrulys that I work with now are incredible, and they push me. They push me to be better, to do more, and I see them and I see the work they do, and I find that really inspirational. Other entrepreneurs, other peers. I'm not a big believer in looking at unachievable figures. I'm sure that Sheryl Sandberg is incredible and amazing and inspirational, but really it's the people that sit next to me at work that I look to for inspiration.
Sure.
Because I see ordinary people doing extraordinary things, being extraordinary, and that is really inspirational, and it feels achievable and relatable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I guess it gives you a sense of pride as well, because you picked them well, right? You've chosen great people to work around that then make you feel happier to be in their company every day. and I guess inspire you to
There
be
is
better.
nothing better than going to work with a bunch of awesome people and
Yeah.
doing impossible things together and
Yeah.
finding that what you thought was impossible actually is possible
Yeah.
if you all work together, if you know what you're doing. You're learning from your mistakes as you go along, having a laugh as you go along. I think humour is so underrated as an entrepreneurial
Yep.
quality. Being able to laugh and not take yourself too seriously.
Laugh. There we go. She's from Newcastle. I was waiting because you don't sound like a northerner, but there we
No.
go. We got one in the end. Okay, last question. So, are you unruly till you die, unruly for life, or are you going to potentially do something after unruly? Is there like any point where you think this might not be what I do forever, or has it never crossed your mind?
Unruly forever.
Yeah.
And I think everybody who comes through Unruly is forever unruly.
Yeah.
There's something very special about the company that does instill a loyalty. Even when people move on to do other things and exciting things, whether it's starting up their own business, whether it's travelling overseas, there's always a little bit of unruly in everybody when they move on.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Sarah, and I guess for anyone that listens or is listening to these podcasts and thinking about the entrepreneurship sector in the UK, following that sort of stereotype of a whole load of young hipster kids in Shoreditch just with their laptops trying to start companies, Sarah is evidence, the epitome and evidence that that's not quite the case. She has started a hugely successful international company, which she sold for a lot of money, and she still proudly wants to work there every single day. She's not all about the exit. She's very, very much passionate about staying there and building on a culture that she's obviously extremely proud of. You know, they've got kids running around their office all over the place. It's very much a family kind of environment, but it is a technology company. At the end of the day, it is technology, it is media. But I think it goes very much against the grain of what you'd expect a stereotype to be.